we noticed something a little funny. We were reported to DCFS for leaving the hospital against medical advice with an infant while my wife was laying in the hospital bed.
What?
Yeah. Reported to Child Services.
And we'll be all right if the Lord he be our strength. We'll be all right if the Lord he be our strength. We'll be all
right. This is my friend Alex.
Hey, Stuart.
What's up, Alex? Alex is my financial advisor with, can we say this? Can I plug your company?
Yeah.
Is that allowed?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Kenny will mind.
Okay, great. Well, with Actus Wealth, we do all kinds of fun things with them. You've been with them for how long, Alex?
Been with them since their inception long ago, a year ago.
In a galaxy far, far away.
Actually, it's funny. Since getting into finance, all of my contracts have been signed on my birthday, August 8th. So
really?
I joined them in August 8th of 2022. And so one year since Actus has actually been born.
I feel like this is a sign somehow. Like there's a sign here.
It's absolutely a sign. I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign, but it's a sign.
It's a sign of something.
Yes.
It's definitely a sign of something. And you just had a baby. Congratulations. Well, not you, but
I helped.
You helped. You assisted.
I assisted in having a baby. We had little Anastasia Marie Peyton.
Are you going to call her Anastasia?
I don't know. I haven't had a nickname yet.
Okay. Annie?
See, people have
said that. Let me recommend Annie. You don't like that? That's not for you?
I don't know. And then some people had said, Anna from Frozen, and that just makes me want to gag.
It's a Disney movie, so you can't.
Disney movie. I can't. That's literally it. And they were like, actually, someone was like, oh, you named her Anastasia after that Disney movie about Anastasia. No. There was an Anastasia before that. Surprisingly enough, right?
Who would have thought that name would exist outside
of Disney?
Who would have ever thought that possible? Well, that's cool. So, and this is your third, right?
This is our third. So
3 girls?
3 girls in 3 years. I have a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old. She just turned 2 Monday, and then this one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of.
And your family's from here, from the Southwest Louisiana region.
We are from LeBeau, north of Opelousas.
Oh,
God's country.
The big city.
The big city. I think the last census, 60, 70 something people there.
Why even have a census?
I don't know. I don't trust it either, because you can't just drive up and ask questions out in LeBeau. So
they don't have accurate counts.
No, not at all.
Why are you asking me questions, son?
That's exactly LeBeau. So I don't know how they got those numbers, but I roll with it anyway.
They just drove by and I don't know. There's 5 people in that house. There's 3 in that house.
That's basically
something
it.
like that. But yeah, so you just like, how old is your youngest? Like 2 weeks?
2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks.
Got that. Man, I'm a smart guy.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
So you got a 2-week-old, and when you were at the hospital, this is why I knew we had to talk about this.
Yes.
When you were at the hospital, there were some problems. Not with the baby. Everything was good with the kid, but you had some issues with the hospital itself.
We did. So I guess we'll just get into it.
Let's go.
So now I will say, just as a little warning here, I don't tell stories in a linear way because I forget. So my wife's the one that keeps track of days and times things happen. So you gotta work with me here. But my wife went
fast and loose.
That's exactly it. So I might have to add some addendums to past things said. We'll see.
Okay. We'll pick it up later.
So I guess my wife went into labor early Saturday morning in the wee hours, right? 2, 3 o'clock, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was asleep, and then my mom came and picked her up, and I went back to sleep. So, we got to the hospital. Everything was fine. This particular hospital we went to, we chose this hospital for a reason.
As a person does when they're having a baby.
Exactly.
You don't intentionally pick a hospital you don't like.
Exactly. So this was, and we had our other child there. And the reason why we picked them is that they were so different than the hospital we used in New Orleans.
Okay.
And so we thought, well, this is more personable, yada, yada, yada. So we're having the baby, and everything's great. And it was, once again, the reason why we went there. Nurses, fantastic.
Yeah.
We love our OB that we use, my wife uses. So everything's golden. We have the child. Bilirubin levels were a little up. But
jaundice. You got to worry about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think we had that with the other one too, a little elevated, but the child was pink, no yellow. So we were pretty sure she wasn't jaundice.
Yeah.
Nurses didn't think so either, but it's a little elevated levels.
Yeah.
And so, with the other babies, we basically did a whole 24-hour cycle. Wife stayed there 24 hours. The blood tests were ran on the baby, and then we left.
Standard delivery.
Standard delivery.
Yeah.
Thank God, right? What a blessing. Nothing gone wrong. And so we were expecting that this time. And so the day after the birth, I had the other 2 kids. We were wasting time around Lafayette, torturing the Olive Garden waitresses and waiters.
It's their fault for having the endless pasta bowl.
That's it, exactly. And so we go to see my wife and let the kids see the baby. Once again, things are normal. Nurse comes in. She says, look, we'll do the last round of blood tests in the next 15, 20 minutes. I think that was going to be, forgot what mark they were looking for. Maybe it was that 24-hour mark, whatever it was. And we're like, golden. Sounds great. OB comes in, checks the wife. He goes, you're ready to go home. Pediatrician comes in. It was the pediatrician on call. This is a Sunday at this point. So pediatrician on call comes in, looks at the baby. He says everything's fine. He doesn't think he wants to see the blood results because of Billy Rubin, but everything looks fine. So at this point, this is standard, right?
Yeah.
This is the dream.
Yeah.
Have a child, everything's right, everything's good. So
you're the ending of a rom-com.
That's literally it. The only weird thing that occurred in that interaction with the pediatrician, which, mind you, it's not our pediatrician, right? Like, this is the pediatrician on call.
Got it.
We don't know this guy.
Right. They just came in. It's whoever happened to be there.
That's who was there. He pulled the short straw and works on a Sunday. And so we didn't give our child the vitamin K shot, immunization, birth immunization.
Okay.
And it was the only kind of weird interaction we had. Is he said, he went, we give the vitamin K and y'all didn't get it. And we're like, okay. Because once again, like, we have a family doctor. We go to pediatrician. So this guy's just Joey off the street.
Right.
And he was like, so, the chances are your baby could, bleed to death in their brain. And we're like, oh, thank you. That's pleasant. I don't know what to tell you. Nothing. I
hear about those stories all the time.
Of course.
The brain bleeding babies.
Exactly. And I'm like, and once again, this is not our medical provider. We don't know him. We don't,
Right.
But then he cleared the baby, said the baby was fine. So I look at my wife. I'm like, we're ready to go home. I need you home anyway, because I'm over here with the 2 girls and I'm having a fun time. But we've eaten French fries and at Olive Garden, one of them was drinking ketchup. Like, that's where we're at right now. So we need you back home. And so I told her, I'm like, you ready to leave after the blood work, assuming everything comes back okay. Because obviously if blood work shows something, then,
This is baby blood work we're talking about.
Baby blood work, yeah.
Got it.
And of course, something comes back bad. I'd like to figure it out. The bilirubin levels are still high, then what's causing it? Let's chill. I can do another night.
Yeah.
And nurse comes in and I tell her, I said, look, we'd like to leave. Wife would like to leave after blood work's done. She goes, oh, that's fantastic. I'll talk to the pediatrician on call. They get the discharge papers ready for the baby. Mm-hmm. And after the blood work comes back, assuming all is well, y'all go home. And so, fantastic. A few seconds later, she comes back in the room and we're happy. I'm happy. Wife's going to come back. The kids are just jumping for joy. They want mama back. They love daddy. But I'm not. It's funny. I was putting them to sleep.
That maternal instinct.
Oh, I was putting them to sleep, and they were like, "Love you." I said, "I love y'all too." I was like, "Y'all happy you're with daddy?" And they both went, "Yes." And then both started crying. They went, "But we want mom." I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm not even offended. I understand.
Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah,
that's life.
So you could see why it's like my wife's ready to be home too.
Right.
So
right.
She comes back. She goes, "Hey, actually, I'm so sorry. The pediatrician says you can't leave. Sorry." I'm so sorry.
The pediatrician says you can't leave. This is the on-call guy.
On-call guy says you can't leave. And I went, okay, for what?
Right.
What? And she says he didn't give a reason. And I went, okay, well, how, and at this point I'm remaining calm. Like, hey, let's figure out.
You haven't started throwing tables yet.
No,
not
like,
yet.
Let's, and so I told her, I said, okay, well, look, we're just going to do the blood work. And then assuming it all comes back, because at this point we haven't even had the blood work. I mean, I don't know if something comes back, right? So I'm like, all right, that's fine. Let's wait until the blood work. And I told her, I said, after that, I'm probably going to escalate this. Like, because if the blood work comes back good, we're going to go home.
Right.
And
I assumed that he was waiting for the blood work. Is that not?
Yeah, well, that's what you would think. The doctor, yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, you just had a baby that had high bilirubin levels. And I mean, even though we're all pretty sure that she didn't have jaundice, but it's just...
This is already ringing suspicious.
Yeah.
You can't go home.
I can't go home.
We don't know why.
There's no reason. And so the nurse walks out, and I looked at my wife and I went, do you want to go home? She was like, well, yeah. I said, okay, you want to go home? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I just need you to confirm that. You want to go home? We're ready to go home. She was like, yeah. I said, okay, I just need to make sure before I start. Before this becomes something. Exactly. Like before I start having to speak sternly to people, right? Like, let's just figure this out, because I'm ready on call for those kind of conversations. And so I told my wife, I'm like, okay, well, look, I'm going to go catch the nurse outside. So I go to the nurse's station, pull her aside, and I'm like, hey, so yeah, look, we're going to leave after the blood work. We're going to be discharged. Assuming it all comes back well, that's what's going to happen.
Well, it's a hospital, not a prison.
Exactly. Just because what's the, alternative? What's the reason why? Nurse goes, I am so sorry. He canceled the orders for the blood work.
The doctor did?
The pediatrician on call.
Why?
So of course, my next question was, I said, why? Why would he cancel the blood work? And she goes, well, I don't know.
They don't know a lot of things.
They don't know. And
the don't knows are stacking up. This is not good.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this all worse. So I'm like, well, okay, well, he needs to know, start knowing.
Yeah.
I was like, because this is insanity. So I go back in the room and I tell my wife, and she's like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I have no idea. Well, at this point too, it's like 11:30 or something. My kids are like dying of hunger because they don't eat breakfast when they're with dad because they just don't know how to fix it, and they all want different things. And so I'm like, you know what? Like we just eat early lunches with dad. Okay, so at this point they're starving, and the only place I can think of that was a little above fast food.
Olive Garden.
But Olive Garden, baby. Because I can get them spaghetti, plain noodles, some French fries, right?
Olive Garden has not bought ad space on this podcast.
No,
for the
but
record.
They should.
They should. I should get a check for this. Yes. Or at least some coupons.
Absolutely. Send them my way too. So we go to Olive Garden, and at this point, I realize things are a bit funky, and so I make some calls. Called a close confidant of mine, close friend, who has experience in these sorts of things. I called him. I start telling him the situation. He's like, no, nobody. Like this ain't right. Something's up.
Yeah.
You can't just do this. This is, because if he'd have told me, don't stop it. This is just normal. This is standard. Now, not that I would have liked it, but I probably would have been a little less ready to push as hard, but he's like, no, this is unreasonable.
But he gave you some insight.
Oh, yeah.
This is not going to work.
Exactly. This is not going to work. This is not... I call my dad, who called some people who he works with as well, who are experienced in things like patient rights and stuff like that, and they're the same way. They're like, no.
It's not how this works.
It's not how this works. It's not how any of this works, actually. You know the meme, that's not how any of this works. That's not how any of this works. And so I call my wife back. I'm like, we're going to have to fight this. This is unbelievable. So I tell her, through a suggestion, I called one of the administrators on call that day. I explained the whole situation to him, and he's like, okay, well, it's normal that you disagree. Patients sometimes disagree with the pediatricians on call. So what is it that you disagree with being held there? I went, I disagree with nothing. And he was like, okay. I went, because I haven't been given anything to disagree with. And he was like, well, there has to be a reason why he won't discharge you. I went, that's why I'm calling you. He hasn't given a reason. And he was like, well, the nurses I said, they said that they don't know. And he goes, well, you can't just not have an answer. I went, well, that's why I'm calling you. I'm just as confused as you are, my guy, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on here.
So you're in your wife's in the hospital. They're not letting you leave. Nope. You have no reason why. Nobody else.
Wait, let's clarify here. She could leave. The baby could not leave.
Oh, no. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Let's keep that. Let's make sure that's all.
Your wife can go home, no problem. We're keeping the baby.
We're keeping the baby.
No way, dude.
Actually, they had said that at one point. They said, well, no, you can go home. The baby will stay here.
No.
And it was said just like that, too. So I think that was kind of like the warning, like sit down and shut up if you want to stay with your baby.
No, sir.
So at this point, realize just
So they're flexing on you a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. And just realize at this point too, they're just for a summary, we still don't have a reason. There's no reasons. We don't have a blood test. We don't have we have nothing. So I tell this admin on call, I'm like, also the pediatrician moved the blood work. Why would you move the blood work on a baby that had high bilirubin levels when the whole point of checking it was the bilirubin levels in the first place? Admin on call knows nothing. And he said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Okay, thank you. While I am feasting on
endless
spaghetti for the children, I think the admin on call and maybe a charge nurse, something like that, I don't know all these titles, showed up in the room with my wife. Now realize I am not there.
You're not there.
I'm not there.
You're feeding children.
I'm feeding children. The wife's recovering from something called having a baby. So she's good to go home, but I mean, she's tired. She hadn't slept in 32 hours.
Sure.
Admin organized everything, and they're like trying to speak to her without me there.
Right.
Well, she's like, well, let me call my husband. So she calls me. I'm in the parking lot at Olive Garden at this point. A lot of this story revolves around Olive Garden.
I'm noticing that.
I'm sorry.
They are the sponsor of this episode.
Yes. So I'm in the parking lot at this point and get on the phone with the charge nurse. I'm on speakerphone. And I'm like, hey. And she's like, hey, so what's the problem here? I'm like, well, you probably know it by now. We'd like to leave. Why is this
We're ready to go home. Let's go.
And so we're having a conversation. She goes, you know what? If it's the blood work, I'll just get you the blood work. I'll get it back. I'm like, okay, that's all I wanted. And then I want everyone discharged afterwards.
I want to go home.
Simple.
Yeah.
Simple.
Not complicated.
Let's just discharge after. That's fine. Well, they schedule the blood work back. We have the blood work done. Blood work comes back. Everything's fine. Bilirubin levels, everything is good. This child is golden.
Very healthy.
Okay, golden.
No flags.
No flags. Nothing. At this point, nothing is wrong. At this point, the OB's already cleared Meredith, my wife. At this point, the pediatrician's already looked at the child. Child's fine. Even before the blood work. Now the blood work comes back. Nothing was wrong. So at this point, I go, in my head, because I'm stupid sometimes, I said, well, obviously they have to discharge us now. There's no reason they can hold us now.
Right. Because the baby's fine.
Because the baby's
Mama's fine.
That's it.
Let's go.
Let's leave. And so I asked the dumb question. So when are we being discharged? I'm not at the hospital at this point. When are we being discharged? He's still saying no. I'm so sorry. I'm like, okay.
This is the on-call pediatrician still.
On-call pediatrician. I'm like, okay. And so then I asked, it just went, so who's this guy? And she was like, what? I'm like, who is he? She's a pediatrician on call. I'm like, okay, am I not understanding? Is it like, the little umbrella thing where it's like family, Christ?
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the top of that was actually pediatrician on call.
Absolutely. He is God.
He is.
He is in control.
He's right above him, right? It's a little.
He decides.
It's a little clown umbrella with
this
a little big red nose.
This is such an interesting world. So you're trapped at the hospital, and he's just like, you can't go home.
You can't go home. Yeah, the hospital's become the jail at this point, and the pediatrician has become the jailer. And so.
And he won't tell you why.
But we still don't have a reason why. So at this point.
This is when the table flipping starts.
This is when everything. So I'm calling everyone. I was on the phone. Through this entire process, I'm on the phone with everyone all at once. It's nothing but phone calls. My poor kids don't know what's going on, by the way.
Right.
They're trying to ask me things. But I mean, I can't stop doing what I'm doing now, right? So they're grouchy. They don't know what's going on. They want to know when we're going to pick up mom. They also hear me on the phone, and they know that I'm fussing, so they're wondering, what is going on? They know, so they can hear mom on the speakerphone as well, so they can tell she's distressed. It's crap situation all around.
Right.
So then a solution comes. Nurse tells my wife, we can get you out. Done. You're thank God, guys. We're done with this whole saga. All you have to do is sign out against medical advice. Sign out AMA. and with the child. So
what's the medical advice?
that was issue number one. Is I kept asking, like, what medical advice? Oh, yeah. I'm like, no, what, like, there has to be medical advice to disagree with. So I call the admin on callback. I call my other people too, and they're like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do not sign that. Yeah, why would you sign that? Why would you, like, where's the medical advice?
Right.
There's no medical advice to be had. And that's what I kept asking from the get-go, too. What are we going against?
Oh, they were trying to cover their butts.
Exactly. So, but it gets better, though. So sign out AMA. And there's this little thing, we're going to report you to child services, but we're going to vouch for you. We're going to vouch for you.
God.
We're going to tell DCFS that this is a crazy situation.
So the hospital works for the state in this scenario.
In this scenario, oh, absolutely.
This is insane.
And but
you can go home, just say that you're disagreeing with our advice, and also we're going to call the people who can take your children away and tell them that you did this against our advice.
Yes, but Stuart, calm down. They're going to vouch for us.
Oh my gosh.
They're going to vouch.
The state is going to attack you, but at the same time, they're going to look you in the eye and say, but we think you're a nice guy.
The hospital said they were going to tell them that they don't suspect. There's no signs of abuse.
Oh my gosh.
They think
because you're leaving against medical advice that doesn't exist.
Exactly. And they think we're good parents, which is all I've ever wanted, by the way.
So what's really going on? Is the pediatrician just asleep somewhere? Like, is he golfing and he can't get in touch with them?
No, they can get in touch with him the whole time. He kept saying no. He was refusing to sign us out. So I kept asking, what's the medical advice? What's the medical advice? Refused to sign it. Get that out of my face. Get that out of my wife's face. Don't bring that back in here. We're done.
A bureaucratic pile of nonsense.
Oh, absolutely. But then it gets better. We have a medical reason now. Are you ready?
Oh.
So
okay.
Nurse comes back. Pediatrician will not discharge us because it is Sunday.
That's the medical reason.
That is the medical reason.
It's the Lord's Day.
I asked. That's
Can't
what
discharge
I asked.
on the Lord's Day.
I said, the Lord's Day. We don't discharge. Isn't that like, we are so good here.
We are holy people.
And so I said,
that is ridiculous.
But it was said
Can't
with a straight
discharge you
face.
because
it was said with a straight face.
It's a Sunday.
And so I said, well, okay, that's cool. Not medical advice, but that's cool. Why not Sunday? Why? Because it's Sunday. And she goes, well, he said pediatricians' offices are closed.
But there's nothing wrong with the kid.
So that's what I'm thinking. But I'm also thinking, okay, the oil shop isn't closed. I mean, isn't open either. What are we, you know? And so I pressed further. I'm like, what do you mean? Why do we had already given the hospital the name of the pediatrician we were going to go see and the name of our family doctor. So it's not like we were in there like, we don't do doctors. we gave.
Which, let's also just be completely honest here. That is within your rights as well.
Oh, absolutely.
If you were the guy who's like, no, we don't do doctors. We don't do any shots. We don't do that.
Oh,
that's within your parental rights.
Oh, absolutely. But that's what made it even more insane was that I was like, yeah, this is our family practitioner and this is our pediatrician that we'll be going to after we get out the hospital. So
you're going along. You're going along with the system.
Yeah, that's exactly that's what we've done with every child, right? And so, you know, I'm like, well, what is that? Well, you can't. He said you can't schedule the first pediatrician appointment because it's Sunday. I said, okay, well then that means either he thinks that I do not want to schedule a pediatrician's appointment, or he thinks that we are actually too stupid to schedule one. I said, whichever one he chooses, I just like that in writing. That'd be great. This continues going on, and there's just.
I need you to put on a piece of paper that we can't go home because it's Sunday.
Because it's Sunday. I want to know that. And I had asked the nurse too. I said, so nobody gets discharged on a Sunday? No one? No moms who have ever had a baby at this particular place. None of them have ever had a baby on a Sunday or had a baby on a Saturday or a Friday night.
And was discharged on Sunday.
Sorry,
sir, that doesn't happen here.
That doesn't happen here. So that's what I'm wondering, right? And so things, keep progressing. And eventually I'm talking to the charge nurse again. I said, why are we here? Who is the root cause of all these problems? I need to know the name. She goes, Dr. So-and-so, the pediatrician on call. I went, then fine, done. He's done. Nope. If he comes into this room, if he touches my child, if he speaks to anyone, I'm calling the police. He's no longer allowed in the room. He makes my wife uncomfortable.
We want a new doctor.
Done. Fire him. I said, consider this a formal complaint, an informal complaint. I said, I'll write it. I'll send you an email right now. I'll send you a text. I'll fax it.
I will put this in writing.
It will be whatever you need. So then nurse on charge goes, okay, you can fire him. Fantastic. We're done. So they called other pediatricians, and none of them would come in and discharge us because of liability.
What?
Because obviously the situation at this point is just so...
Okay, so let's just review.
So crooked.
So this other guy escalates the situation unnecessarily to the point where there's a problem. And then nobody else will look at the situation and say, well, I'll fix this. Nope. Do you see the bureaucratic nonsense that this is?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
One guy with a God complex makes everything else fall apart.
Exactly. And he's the cause. He's the cause of them. He's the cause of no one else. He's the cause of the liability that's there anyway.
Right.
And let's remember, he's part of this institution. So the institution's at fault. So when they came in like, no one wants to because it's kind of a crazy situation and it's kind of a liability. I'm like, you caused it. This is all your fault.
You did this.
Like, why am, like, you know.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm still on all kinds of calls. I get a text from my wife. Hey, they're trying to make me sign. Realize I'm not in the hospital.
You're still in the Olive Garden parking lot.
I'm still, no, I think I'm home by now. But the whole drive home.
You brought the kids home.
Whole drive home, I am on the phone. Wife calls, they're trying to get me to sign a blank against medical advice. And they're telling me that they already talked to the social worker. And they're telling her to tell DCFS not to pursue y'all. Y'all aren't abusers. We're vouching for you. And they're trying to get me to sign it, and it's blank. So
oh my gosh.
I call, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Well, look, we just really want to get you home. The nurses go, this is crazy. We do not know why this is happening to y'all. We want y'all to be able to get out. We think this is crazy. We don't know why he's doing what he's doing, he being the pediatrician on call. We want to get y'all out. Just sign it. And it's blank. And I said, well, number one, what? No. Number one, no. Number two, what's the medical advice? They're like, we don't know. I'm like, well, no. And then I
thought you fired the doctor. Why does he still have any degree of authority whatsoever in the situation?
Well, because I guess no one else would take it over. So we're stuck with old boy. And so I told him, I said, you know what? Fill that out. Fill it out. And
write the reason on this paper. I want it
filled out. And they were like, what? I said, fill it out. Fill the entire thing out. And I said, Meredith, because I'm speaking from, like, Meredith, please scan it on your phone and send it to me when it's filled out. I want to read it filled out. Nurses were like, And so they all leave the room.
Oh, my God.
They leave. I told them to leave the paper with my wife, since they were trying to get her to sign it so bad. Leave the paper with my wife. They all leave the room. They come back in 5 minutes later. Hey, he discharged y'all. You ready to go?
What?
Ready to go.
He said go home.
Go home.
That means somebody called him and yelled at him.
Go home. So you're thinking, this is the end of the story. Wow, that was exciting. A lot of Olive Garden. Wasn't as exciting as I'd like it to be. But yeah, that was cool. So we get home and all breathing a sigh of relief, right?
The trauma is over.
Here's another funny thing. My wife's milk wouldn't drop. We breastfeed, right? Not me, but it is 2023. But no, so my wife's milk had not dropped yet, right?
Right.
And hormones, stress, those kinds of things can affect that.
Of course.
Moment we got
who would have thought the stress on the body could affect the way the body works?
The moment we got discharged, the milk dropped, right? So just to know the level of just stress and anxiety and torture this was. I mean, you're hearing my point of view. Imagine my wife.
Right.
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 Especially after people are like, no, you can leave, but we're going to keep your baby.
Oh, my gosh.
That doesn't do well for a new mother.
Absolutely
or an
not.
old mother, for that matter.
Right.
So we get home. Everything's fine. We won. Yay. Everything's good. I call everyone. We're good. We're good. We're good. The next day, our first full day home, my wife's looking at the records from the record portal. Because she was just
interested. The patient portal.
Portal.
Yeah, I got you.
She's interested through this whole debacle. What did they write? Is there anything there?
As far as diagnosis or medical concerns
and just to see what they were talking about, what they were writing. And we noticed something a little funny. We were reported to DCFS for leaving the hospital against medical advice with an infant while my wife was laying in the hospital bed.
What?
Yeah. Reported to Child Services for leaving. Now, at this point, realize we never asked to leave against medical advice. We were discharged, properly discharged.
Oh, wow.
But not only that, the report was made according to their own timeline while my wife was in the hospital bed with the baby. And so DCFS got a report that we had left the hospital with the infant.
When you were still there.
But we were still there.
Oh, dang.
And so
that's a false report.
It's a false report. And so then it gets then the social worker's notes, you scroll down, the social worker's notes, they were probably discharged and left at this time. I'm like, oh, isn't this beautiful? So we get this DCFS report. So I'm beyond myself. My wife is she melts on the spot. I mean, it was terrible. The whole day was terrible. So I decide to call the social worker.
Right? The social worker on your report.
Yeah, who actually physically reported us. And the conversation's unbelievable. Hello, hi, is this so-and-so? Yeah, this is she. Crazy, I know, right? Did you report us to DCFS?
This is the hospital social worker.
Yeah, hospital social worker. And she goes, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm like, no, that's fine. Everything's fine. I just need to know. So you did file it. I'm so sorry. I know it was just so crazy. That was so crazy. I'm sorry y'all had to go through that. And I went, yeah, thank you so much. So, you reported us for leaving against medical advice with the infant. I know. I went, kind of crazy though, huh? Because we didn't ever leave the hospital. I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, so you reported
Tell me you
us.
recorded this conversation.
I did not record this conversation. I wasn't ready. I didn't expect that. I didn't even expect to talk to the woman. Number one, didn't expect to talk to the woman. Number two, do you really if you were in that situation, would you thought you would have called this person and she just go, oh my God, yeah. I didn't. I mean,
You weren't expecting an admission of guilt.
No, I was
My bad.
I was expecting a ton of things,
but
not that. And
right.
so I'm like, well, this is nuts. And so then here's the comfort. Because if there's one thing you should know about this whole process is that we were confident the entire way. From vouching.
They held your hand while they called Family and Child Services and they said, we're going to help you.
They said, you're our guy.
These people are abusing their children.
We vouch for you. You're decent.
We're on your team.
We're on your team. Team.
But we're keeping
Alex
the baby.
Yeah, exactly, right? So,
oh my gosh.
So the social worker goes, I doubt they'll investigate it though. I mean, because blah, blah, blah. And it's going on. I'm like, well, that doesn't matter. So realize when you report to DCFS, you're reported to DCFS. That's the end of it.
There's no takebacks.
Even if they close the case, it's still there. So I call an admin on call after I speak with this.
So you have this flag on your report, your name forever.
Yeah. So I talk to.
Well, that's delightful.
Oh, it's fantastic.
That's what every white conservative male needs.
And not only that,
there's a handful of those on your record.
Working in the finance industry, you have there's certain licenses and stuff where if you've done something wrong, it's permanent, even if it's resolved, and people can see the notes. But so I take that seriously.
Oh,
that
yeah.
It would be something would be permanent.
Absolutely.
So I spoke to an admin on call, and the admin on call, trying to think. I'd spoken to him. Oh yeah, so I'd spoken. Yeah, this is my favorite one. I spoke to him, and I'm telling him, and he's just kind of like nonchalant about it. He's like, "Oh my God, that sucks. Yeah, that was done in error. I mean, yeah, but I'm sure they're not going to investigate it or anything."
And that's the way it ends. I'm sure it's fine.
I'm sure it's fine.
I'm sure it's going to be fine.
And so I brought up. I said, "Yeah, but you don't understand. This is permanent." I said, "So let me run you like a scenario here. I bring my child somewhere." Little Anastasia has a bruise on her shin, and they say, "Hey, Dad, how did she get that bruise?" And I go, "Well, she always hits this table in the living room." And then the doctor goes, "I don't know, that kind of looks like a shoe mark," and then reports us to DCFS, which is let's just be very clear here, that if someone seriously thought that we were committing abuse, I would rather that sort of claim, because at least in their minds,
it was justifiable.
In their minds, they were concerned. Right. Yeah. So let's just.
In their mind, they were doing something that was right.
Exactly. So.
But it was actually wielded like a weapon.
Exactly. So if
you do this, we're gonna push the button.
Yes, and then they pushed the button anyway. So, right? Realize that, right? They still pushed the button even though we left being discharged, not against medical advice.
Right.
But so I just want to make that clear that if there was a reason, even if it was wrong, and not that I would have just loved to have that report either, but even if it was wrong, if in their minds they thought they were doing good, which isn't the case in everything, obviously, we've been talking about morality, but at least in their mind they thought they were protecting a child, and I'm always going to be in favor of that. So, but so I brought that up, and the admin on call goes, well, do you expect to get another DCFS claim? And he said it in a very snooty way, and I went, yeah, absolutely. I said,
I didn't expect to get the first one.
That's what I said.
Sir.
I said, if the people making DCFS claims are like the people you employ, then I expect to have a ton by the end of this. Like, for instance, I could be discharged from the hospital and report it for leaving against medical advice. Didn't think that would get reported for that.
Right. Right.
And so it was one thing after another, talking to these admins. And then, by the way...
And you're the bad guy, by the way.
Oh, I'm the bad guy.
You notice this in the whole time through? Like, you are the criminal.
I'm aggravating them. How dare you not just deal with a DCFS claim? How dare you not just
roll over and take it, sir?
How dare you not just be happy that you're home? And then there's this idea, too, where we had become a problem patient at that point. You know, no one else wanted to come in because there's liability. You can tell that they were stressed when I talked to them, right? And which I get it, but you can't run around telling me, oh, no, sir, it's just policy. Whose policy? Why does your policy matter?
Right.
Like, I don't, wake up in the morning and go, okay, how do I live my life? I don't know. Let me read the policy from this particular hospital. What do they have to say about this or that? So at this point, I'm calling everyone in the sun and I'm being angry. And I'm not acting the fool, but I'm like, I'm the fool disguised behind sanity, right? And eventually I get to someone in the social work department, and I said, look, I want that policy read to me too, because I'm thinking about something. I started to think, what if their policy was to report to DCFS if you attempted to leave AMA? Because then I have a policy disagreement.
So also, why is a policy being equated with a law?
No, exactly. So we have that.
So there's not like a mandatory reporting law in place. It's just a hospital policy.
Yeah. And now there is mandatory reporting for the social worker if abuse is suspected.
Right.
But realize what triggers that suspected abuse, quote unquote, is taking the child out AMA, which we have not done, which we never did, which we never intended on doing. That was half our fight, was saying, get that crap out our face. We're not signing it. So I talked to this.
Which let's just take a moment and realize the incredible amount of power that is wielded by the hospital doctor.
Oh yeah. Some fool who I saw for 5 minutes.
He could say, realistically too, like when doctors make their rounds in a hospital, you don't see them long. You see them for 5-6 minutes at a time, maybe twice a day, maybe. Yeah. Most of the time it's once, it's early in the morning, they run the rounds. I mean, we've been in the hospital a lot, we know about this. And the doc comes in and says, here's my recommendations, and then they leave.
That's it.
And if you say, I don't want to do that. We live in a world where it's impossible for parents to have their child's best interest at the front of their brain. We're not allowed to. You just say, you say this, yes, I will do it.
And
it's insane.
It's absolutely insane. And let me just clarify once again for the 80th time. The thing that we attempted to do was go home after a child had been cleared okay, blood work okay, wife cleared and okay.
Right.
So realize
imagine if something had been questionable.
Oh yeah.
You'd be in jail right now.
Nothing controversial here, right? This was not, and there was nothing in writing that like even just looking at the medical stuff after, there was nothing even in writing for a reason that we were kept. So realize I can't even, like, there's nothing, you can't sit across from me and go, I think y'all should have just done what they had suggested, because nothing was suggested.
Right.
Right?
Give me the advice.
Yeah. Like what was, I would have gladly disagreed with advice if I disagreed with the advice given. I just never had that opportunity.
Right.
Because nothing was given. So at this point, I'm still on the phone with, so I asked this lady in social work, I don't even know her position. They have 8,000 different positions in there, by the way. And so I said, I want to see that policy. I want to see that policy. I want you to read it to me. You have to be able to read that to me over the phone. Because I want to see if it says, that the policy, because then, although I disagree with the policy, I would have a little more understanding and pity towards the social worker.
They're pinned by the manual.
Right? So like, now would I be happy? No, just I would feel a little more sympathy. And I'd feel it's all about the feels. I would feel a bit better afterwards. So somewhere during that conversation, the lady had made mention, well, if DCFS comes to your house, call us. And I went,
I'm definitely not involving you any farther.
Oh, absolutely not.
You are the reason I am in this situation.
Absolutely not. And I already had recommendations on lawyers to call if DCFS came to my house. So I told her, I said, no, thank you. But if DCFS came to my house, there's an attorney I would call. I would call an attorney. I wouldn't call the people that reported me.
Heck yeah.
So then I said, okay, but now I want that policy read to me. And she goes, have your lawyer requested then if you want to know it. And I went, no, unacceptable. Read it to me now. She goes, I'm going to have to transfer you. I'm going to have to transfer you to my director of blah, 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 some other made up position. And finally get on the phone with this woman after like 3 hours of waiting, smoldering, wife's in shreds and tears. I should mention that all this that I'm talking about right now, remember this is the crazy timeline, this is like 3-4 days after the birth, right? So this whole saga lasted like 8 hours.
This is like a week.
8 hours during the day and then throughout the next week. Wow. And so finally I speak to them, and this is when glory happened. They admit it.
Admit what?
They admit it, that the report to DCFS was made in mistake. I should not, the actual words, you should not have been reported to DCFS. Not only that, they made the social worker call DCFS and say she did it in error and that it was a wrong report that shouldn't have been reported, and to remove it. And DCFS like, well, no. And so
they're saying they won't remove it.
No, because that's just how it goes. Now it can be closed, quote unquote, right? It can be whatever, but like
much
it stays there. So then they were like, yeah, but we told the social workers, sent them like a thing, like admitting that she made the mistake, yada, yada, yada. And we told them that if an investigator ends up picking up the case, to call them first. Well, there's two great things here. First of all, y'all all started the mess, so kind of get out the way kindly. Thank you. Number two, does no one know if the case has actually been closed or is still open? Because they said, don't worry, if an investigator is assigned to it, DCFS assured us they're gonna call us first to figure out the details of the case. So I'm like, well, hold on a second. It's not closed yet? Like, is it not closed? Is it just waiting there? Is there just so
at any moment somebody could come, excuse me, Mr. Peyton, I have some questions.
And exactly. And I'm going to go, hold on one second. Let me call my hospital representatives. They're going to vouch for me.
These are my friends.
They're my pals.
I mean, sure, they made a mistake and they put me in this whole situation and there was some pride problems involved and everybody didn't want to get sued. But at this time, they're going to get it right.
Look,
that's crazy.
Look back at all your friendships. The ones that haven't reported you to DCFS, were they ever real friends? Right? So that was where...
It's the ones that really have.
Yes.
Those are the ones that stand with
It's
you.
all about the DCFS reports we make along the way. So at this point, wife's in shambles. I'm angry. And I'm in shambles too. And then, of course, at this whole time, you have little Anastasia Marie, poor baby. My smallest baby I've ever had as well. She had a decent sized head, not a monstrosity like the other ones had because of me, unfortunately. My poor wife. But so poor little Anastasia's entire birth now is marred with this. It'll always be, hey, remember when we had Anastasia and like DCFS got called on us, right? Like that's always going to be there.
Little DCFS baby.
Exactly. Hey, Meredith, remember when like you cried for 2 straight days? That was hilarious, right? Like it's now marred by, a good event, a beautiful event is now marred by, this cold, and that's what's crazy.
Well, and also it's your wife sitting in anxiety, wondering when the investigator's going to show up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because it could happen any second.
And I've got to go back to work. I've got stuff to do, and so I was actually, I was having dreams where I was leaving the house and like a car would pass by me. Like this is my dreams, by the way. And it's the Alex dream hour. I have a lot to tell you about, but I'll just keep it to one. But I kept having dreams that like I'd leave the house to work and like just a random car that, who cares about it? It was a Camry for some reason in my dream had passed by and that it was actually DCFS. right? And that they were waiting for me to leave, which I don't know if they actually do that, but like that's the mindset we're in. So then I'm like, do I even leave the house? And then of course I can't not leave the house, right? And then, my wife's like, well, what do I do if DCFS comes? I'm like, well, number 1, answer nothing. Number 2, call me. Number 3, don't let them in.
Right.
Like just giving the
do not let them in the
instructions,
house.
Right?
Because a DCFS employee, like a social worker in that capacity, has an insane amount of power.
Oh yeah,
they don't need justifiable cause to take your kids. They could just think something's going on, and they could pull your kids.
Absolutely. That's why I told them. I said, I told her the first question asked is, do you have a warrant? And if they say no, which they probably won't first time around, I said, then you go, okay, well, thank you. We'll get my husband on the line, but you're not doing that. So we're prepping for all this and realize once again, my wife's like in tears, right? Because she just got reported to DCFS for leaving the hospital with an infant. And I keep saying an infant, her child, right? So
she didn't steal somebody's kid.
No. This is her child, right? Our child.
Nuts.
So I mean, the saga hasn't
stopped
been
yet
to rest yet. I did demand after they finally admitted wrongdoing.
Right.
I did demand a written apology to my wife. I said I want it in writing, and they were like, well, I don't know if I can do that, but I can talk with your wife. And all I can think about was, oh my gosh, she's going to be so excited. Hey, babe, remember the people that reported us? They're here to comfort you. That was the craziest thing is imagine you're kicking me underneath this table here right now. And you're like, yeah, but I got some Band-Aids and stuff. I got some Tylenol.
I'm going to take care of you.
I'm going to be,
I'm done.
I'm your friend. Yeah. Like you, and
I'm here to care for you.
You've been literally causing me pain the entire time. So that was
but it's okay. I'm going to make it better.
That was the crazy thing. The whole time it was and I feel nuts. Too, it's insane to me that this was a doctor. Some random dude who I don't trust this guy. I mean, I guess I trust him enough to look at the baby and say, hey, the baby, there's nothing immediate here.
Right.
Like we have a family doctor that we see. Right. And we have a pediatrician that we use until the child's old enough for the family doctor, which is 6 months. So we see a pediatrician for 6 months before we go to the family doctor. So, and the pediatrician was recommended by the family doctor, which is the only reason why we see the pediatrician that we see is because we trust our family doctor. So de facto, we trust this pediatrician that we see, right? It's a little transference of trust there, right? And so, that was the one man can keep you locked up in the hospital. And then
it's insane. It's so much power. It's much insane amounts of authority. And you can see how society has shifted away from the family to the state. Real easily, because and they're wielding their power like a weapon. Like it's the threat. Yeah, you can go home, but your baby's staying here.
Your baby's staying. As if a mother would choose that too.
If you go home, we're gonna have to report you. Sorry.
Yeah. As if Meredith would be like, oh great. Can't wait to get home and have dinner. I'll just keep the baby there. The baby that I breastfeed, by the way.
They're all just flexing in this very strange way. So what's next for you guys? What are y'all doing now?
We're doing a lot. That's what we're doing.
Oh.
So, it's typically they say it's not over till the fat lady sings, except in our case, it's not over till the DCFS report is gone. Right.
Right.
And so, I'm you know me well enough to know that there's some battles I don't fight. There's tons of hills. Like if I was just how I feel all the time, I would die on every hill, right? Like I think vanilla ice cream is better. I'd be ready to just die for that, to disagree with you. But I'm a very moderate, emotionally kind of balanced guy. Everyone around here knows me like that. My clients know me like that. I pass up lots of hills that I don't think are worth fighting. Just because it's not worth the hit to your reputation, especially if it's a stupid fight. And you're confronted every day with stupid fights.
Sure.
But then as a husband and a father, there's some things you can't let go. And so my wife, like I'll never forget when my wife looked at me during the thing. She was like, no, I want to go home. Like, what do you do? Like, do you go, but babe, he said we can't leave. No.
You're advocating for your wife.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Screw you. You can't do that to me. You can't do that to my wife. You can't do that to my daughter. And so, years from now, I don't want the story told And it's not just a pride thing, but I don't want the story told. And it's like, yes, Lucy, Anastasia, Perpetua, and whichever other number we're at that point. No, Dad convinced me just to be calm and just stay in the hospital that extra day for no reason, and that's why I didn't come home. Or well, no, your daddy was going to fight, but then pediatrician on call said no, and he buckled. No. I mean, and first of all, I'm never gonna pass up a battle that's, on right and wrong, and this was a clear right and wrong. Mm-hmm. It is wrong, and I'm not even talking moral. Let's just talk like laws at this point. I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, you can't just keep someone in the hospital. The hospital is not a jail. You cannot do that.
They don't have the authority to do that.
You can't do that. They do not have that. It does not happen. It cannot happen. It should not happen. At least not yet. But it can't happen. So I fought it for that reason. But even besides all of that, when your wife looks at you and says, "Get me home," what do? Mm-hmm. You get her home. And the one thing I had said was, one of the times that I got my maddest and I got my meanest was I said, if my wife's there by sundown, she's going to have to stay the night because I have the kids and got bath time, dinner, I got to put them to sleep. If she's there by nightfall, she's going to stay the night. In the morning, I'm going to show up and everyone's going to have a crappy day because in between now and tonight, I will find an attorney if I have to. I will find someone in law enforcement as well. I don't care who I have to. The janitor,
the guy from LeBeau,
exactly right.
The chief from LeBeau,
anyone, and we're going to show up at that hospital, and we're going to start demanding answers. Right? I'll bring legal representation if I have to. I'll try to find someone. I have, and this is the other thing that I think is very important here. Realize, and this word has lost a lot of its meaning lately, and it's used in all kinds of ways. But think about how privileged I was in that situation because of all my connections. And by that, I just mean knowledgeable people who I can call, who I was able to bounce off what was happening and ask questions. Mm-hmm. Is this worth fighting? Can this even be done? Who should I call? Right? Because I didn't know who to call. It's a hospital. Who do you call? Who do I call? Blah, blah, blah. All of that. Think about someone who knew none of that. Think about how many people have been railroaded before us and maybe even after us. I don't know. It could be happening today for all I know. You wouldn't know. None of us.
Well, it sounds like to me that they're used to wielding this as a threat on a regular basis. Because they wouldn't pull something out like that. Well, you can leave, but not your baby. Oh, well, you can leave, but then we're going to report you to DCFS. See, that's a instinctual response that they have trained, which means it has been played on many before you.
Absolutely. And think about this too. If you could see the shock on their face when they would go, well, pediatrician said, no, he's not discharging y'all. And I'd go, yeah, it's not going to work. We're going to be discharged. We're going to leave. Even just, and saying it in a calm way, right? It's not like I was yelling. There's like shock in the room. It's like, how can he do that? He can't just say no.
Right.
He can't just, and whenever they would say, well, no, and I go, okay, give me the medical reason. It was almost like this. Now, I truly do believe a lot of those nurses, by the way, that they did not have a reason. I believe them wholeheartedly. Because the thing is, if they had the reason, they would have told me the reason just to shut me up because they could tell we were all getting agitated. So it was in their interest to tell me the reason, by the way.
Sure.
And so, when they go, I don't know, and I go, no, I want an answer now. I don't know is not sufficient. I want you could tell they were stunned. Well, how can he do that?
You work for me.
Exactly. What is going on? How can he just demand? And they go, well, we can't. I go, well, then you need to find a way because I'm going to get an answer and we're going to escalate this. I'm going to call everyone. Everyone will be called. All the peoples. They will deal with Alex on a Sunday. So yeah, I mean that's where it was crazy too, is just seeing how they reacted to just someone sternly going no. And not giving a reason, by the way. Because I didn't give it when they would go well, why don't you just stay? What reason I was asked at one point, well, what reason do you have against not staying? I went, because we don't want to.
Right.
Because I said we want to leave. My wife wants to be home.
Right.
There's no other reason. My wife wants to be home, she's going home. And now this is the other thing. It's if the baby, something come back with the blood work, and they're like, oh my gosh, so there's this, we have to monitor this. The baby could die because of this.
Then everybody agrees. Then we should be closest to care.
Exactly. And if my wife
it's not duh.
Exactly. And if my wife said, you know what? No, I want to go home anyway. I'd have been like, okay, if you don't mind leaving. So Meredith, right? Like, there would have been that conversation. Like, so
we gotta take a beat. Let's take a beat.
Like we need to slow down here, right? Like maybe we need to. So realize like all of that. Like Meredith and I are somewhat decently smartish, educated-ish people. Like we obviously know that we would stay in a hospital to be close to care if our baby could die.
Right.
Because we don't. Because their goal is, and this is crazy, we don't want our baby to die.
Who would have thought?
So, there and we kept. I felt so. You ever had to like, you're sitting down. It's like you start this podcast. I'm like, Stuart. By the way, everyone listening, I don't beat my wife. Right? Like it feels weird because like why would you?
You have to clarify that.
Yeah. Like,
because there is a flag on your record now.
Well, exactly.
And so people might think
you're right now a flag.
Well, maybe he does.
Well, who knows?
You do have that flag from DCMA.
Yeah, but you know what? If any of you have any concerns, call the hospital. They will vouch.
They will vouch. They've promised.
They promised.
They've said they'll take care. They will care for your reputation.
Exactly. So I felt like this whole time, like we had to like tell people over and over again, like we don't do things that harm our children. Like we had to keep saying that. Like
because suddenly you were in a different light.
Oh yeah. Because I even had to. I told him at one point, I went, give me a reason to keep my child. I promise you, I'll agree with it. If it's a good enough reason. Like seriously, if it's a good enough reason, we're staying. The fight's over.
Right.
Couldn't produce it.
Couldn't find one.
Could not find one, except that it's the Lord's Day.
Can't go home from a hospital on the Lord's Day.
Cannot go home.
That's crazy.
Which of course is not medical advice, by the way. So
good times.
So yeah, that's our saga.
Well, keep us in the loop about any future developments. We want to know about all the fun things as they come up.
There'll need to be a part 2.
There should be a part 2.
Return of the Olive Garden.
This time it'd be Jimmy John's, maybe.
Maybe so. I'll find someplace better.
Something a little closer.
I say better. I don't want to dog them. They did well.
They did well. The Endless Pasta Bowl. It's the way to go. Alex, thanks for coming and hanging out with us.
Yes, indeed.
We're going to keep up with this more time goes on. But I think this is a big illustration of the degree of overreach that we have in our society right now. We've taken our authority away from our families, away from the parents, and we've placed it wholeheartedly in the state. Mm-hmm. And if there is a challenge to that, there's pushback.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Keep your partners close and your children closer and be ready to fight for them, even if it's something simple. Even though I don't think this was simple, but even on something simple. If someone tries to erode that relationship.
Everybody's healthy. We want to go home.
We want to go home.
You're not in charge here, sir.
This is just a story of a couple that just wants to go home to live. Right? It's that simple. It's little home on the prairie, right?
Right.
We want to go home.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank y'all so much for listening. I appreciate you coming in, Alex.
Yes, indeed.
And we'll catch you guys back here more next time for more podcasts in this series. Thanks for listening to the Parish Circuit. You can find more on YouTube, anywhere that you find podcasts, or theparishcircuit.com.